In combat, a soldier will consist of two basic pieces of equipment: his weapon and his armor. Throughout all of human history, people have been wearing armor to protect themselves, whether this is a knight in plate mail or a modern-day soldier in a ballistics vest. Armor has advanced and changed almost as much as its wearer has. Most of these changes were for the user's needs, others were for intimidation factor, and a good number were just experiments with current ideology. Armor is a vital part of the battlefield, real or virtual. But something has always bothered me about how games simulate armor. I've always found it strange how body armor is treated as some kind of second body or a coat that someone can put on, reducing it to more or less a secondary health bar. I mean, it's understandable. That's the way it's been implemented for as long as I can remember. Many of the older FPS that inspired or even became modern shooters use this concept as a way to ease the more difficult sections of their games and to promote exploration. It's just, there's something really gamey about the thought of, oh man, I'm getting shot, better go put on some more armor so I can get shot more. It really just doesn't make a lot of sense when you say it out loud. The old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, comes to mind. This being coupled with the chalk standard, the more armor you have, the slower you move, and vice versa. I think it's a shame that this concept has been more or less boiled down into a routine installment in most games. It's an afterthought, and developers seem to more or less have forgotten about it. However, this reinforced sweater vest has a bit more to offer than just a blue health bar. Take a game like Chivalry, for example. Knights in armor, swinging axes and swords at each other. It would be loads more interesting if, rather than just the big guys being harder to take down, if it could be mapped as a series of hard and soft targets, each plate of armor being a bit harder to get through, whereas the joints and parts where there aren't plates could be like critical hits, almost killing an opponent as soon as you hit them there. Maybe in a more advanced game, players could even customize their armor layouts to match what they're playing as. If someone were only interested in fencing weapons, they may only be interested in defending the right side of their body. A player could even decide to wear no armor at all and just run around chopping people's heads off with a big axe. This customization would give a little bit more that a player could put into their character, make it almost RPG-esque. Whereas in a more modern setting, a player could have a series of armors they could choose from, ranging from heavy EOD juggernaut suits all the way down to light assault vests and flak jackets. Perhaps each ceramic plate in that armor could be represented on a little diagram, and each time it got shot, it could be compromised and no longer usable. This would add a new layer of strategy to the game. Depending on how a player could preserve their plates throughout the game could determine how willing they are to run into a building or play more defensively towards the end of the game whenever it really counts how many shots are being taken. The way body armor is implemented logically makes almost no sense. Whenever a bullet leaves a rifle or a pistol and hits a human, it would immediately pierce the skin and go into the flesh and tumble and tear and do all kinds of terrible things inside. Besides the bullet itself doing damage, there's also a less obvious damage dealer, and that would be the sheer amount of force behind that bullet. The hole the bullet makes through the target is called the ballistic channel. Around this channel there'd be an obvious dead zone where the kinetic energy of the bullet had dispersed into the target, rupturing organs and blood veins and whatever else might be in there. Now if the target was wearing body armor, the only real concern is the concussive force, knowing that the bullet would be stopped by the plate. The only problem being the force of that bullet is probably the hardest punch you would ever be hit with. For instance, with a 45 ACP round, this being what's fired out of a 1911, you can see it in most games nowadays. With a 230 grain bullet moving at about 830 feet per second, which pretty much means that the bullet's really small but it's moving really fast, comes out to about 850 pounds, which really doesn't sound that bad until you remember that it's 850 pounds across the head of a bullet. So no matter how much armor you have on, getting shot is gonna hurt, and it would probably knock the wind out of you. And if you can remember the last time that you had the wind knocked out of you, and that feeling of, oh god, I can't believe I'm gonna die on a football field, now imagine trying to aim and fire a rifle accurately. This kind of reaction to taking a hit or even just being shot at could be implemented a little bit more in games and give a more interesting vibe to the whole suppressing fire idea. Of course, going through and breaking down and applying this to real life is fun and all, but we're not talking about real life, we're talking about video games. And most of the time it just isn't nearly as fun if you die as soon as you get shot. I would even go so far as to say that it actually hinders a game. Even in games like Insurgency, which will typically allow for you to get shot once or twice, there are moments where I feel like I've just been cheated. or that there's no way for me to even contest my death. That feeling of being cheated could be the main reason that most popular first-person shooters have things like regenerating health and revives so that players can stay in the fight and experience the draw of the genre as much as possible, because at the end of the day, video games are made to entertain their audiences. Although I'm not a game developer and I couldn't say how hard it is to implement these ideas, maybe this could at least open a corridor of thought for future game developers to find those little innovations that'll set their games apart from the crowd. As always, thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.